Oh, good. Now that I had to go do a delivery for our business, let's try this again. I'm not sure. She also found that her skill with magic and moving objects by thought came in handy when she was working with the humans. At times, she could read the minds of them. Other times, the rhythm would help her understand what was needed. The building was fun. Excuse me, the little dog decided that she needs to get up. I have two dogs. The big one you met, the little one, she's the mouthier of the two. Um, the building was fun, but the main reason she came back time and again, with or without Aaron, was because she found the humans naive, even more so than she. They had no idea where the Meru came from, or even the fact that Mari existed. They knew the physical aspects of the world, but not the spiritual one. She listened to the stories the builders told the humans of the one who was their sky in their own realm, the creator of all. They told the humans of the circuit, the connection all beings have to the one and each other. The circuit, although it was a collective consciousness, it had its own personality, a sentient being unto itself. She found, while on Mari, the humans could join the rhythm, the circuit, as everything was connected. To her, it meant the humans had a soul, like the Mari. I'm sorry, like the Meru. Other Meru went to Mari in different forms. Tao learned to keep her vibration up so that she could witness the humans without them even seeing her. Other times she appeared as an animal, a breath of air, or even a ray of light. It took a lot of practice, but it was fun work. All the worlds she visited were sanctioned worlds that anyone with good intentions could visit. Some Meru even went to other worlds on vacations. Some worlds welcomed them, showered them with gifts, and didn't ask for anything in return. Other worlds depended on them, even prayed to them. It was on these worlds that the Mari taught about the one, the circuit, and the net. It was hard for her to translate the meaning, but the worlds seemed to understand. Then, one day, Aaron met her at the usual training grounds. When Tao and Tyrus approached, she frowned. It was an expression that Tao didn't even know was possible for a Meru to make. Tyrus, go back to the village. Today is not a day for games. Erin seemed upset, her vibration just a little lower. Tao instinctively shot love into her direction. Without instructions, Tyrus did the same. Erin gasped at the sudden influx of healing, loving energy. Maybe it's a good thing that you stick around. If Tao makes it back, she may need you. Tao and Tyrus looked at each other. You've got this, girl, Tyrus said as he hugged Tao. You must be going to a forbidden world. As Tao swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. Tao swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. She looked over Tyrus's shoulder at the caillou tree she practiced flowering every day. She felt the love of Tyrus and her family fill her. She inhaled the scent of her world, ingraining it into her mind. She pulled away from Tyrus, whose hug was getting a little too uncomfortable, a little too tight. When she turned to face Aaron again, she saw the tears well up in her instructor's eyes. She suddenly knew what happened to her last student. She saw the memory as the darkness overtook Cyrus and almost overtook Aaron. She wrapped Aaron in an embrace, hard and tight. It'll be fine, Tao whispered. I am a light warrior, chosen by the MG. As she said it, she started to believe it. After all, she had faith that the one had chosen her because she could accomplish anything with the help of her clan, her home. Suddenly, she found herself in a very strange place. It was only rocks, but rocks and sand without a soul. Nothing seemed to have a soul, not even the planet itself. She rustled out of Aaron's embrace to look around. In the distance, there were buildings made of strange materials, not natural to the world. This she could feel. She felt him before she saw him. A Meru, a pink, was running toward them. She didn't feel love from him. She didn't feel welcomed by him at all. She felt anger and pain directed at her. She blocked it with a sphere of love that encompassed both her and Aaron, who, in turn, strengthened the circle. You learned well, child, Aaron said. Tao realized it wasn't from training, but instinct, that she put up the shield. She watched the man approach, slower this time. In her mind, she heard him yelling, "Get away from here! Don't you hear me?" He was angry, and reasonably so. He was trying to warn her the best he could in his state. As he approached, he fell to his knees just outside of the circle. When he lifted his head, Tao gasped in shock. There, kneeling before her, was her long-lost father. She was about to approach him when she felt Aaron grab her by the arm. She stayed in place, but knelt to face him. "Father," she calmly said. He looked into her eyes. "It's me, Tao." His face contorted, the anger twisting it into a painful scowl. "Liar! My Tao is but a little. You are not my Tao." Tao's heart twisted for him. I told you before I get into the story. Without her meaning to, the circle of love grew spikes, reaching out in his direction. One touched him on the arm. He let it penetrate for a moment before recoiling. "I miss you," Tao said. He looked up at Aaron, who was still standing next to Tao. "Why would you bring her here?" he shouted at Aaron. "I thought you were my friend, a friend of my family. She is to be an observer." Aaron was too choked with emotion to answer. She could feel pity. She could feel the pity Aaron felt for her father. It's hard to read through my tears. "I was chosen by MG to spread the light, love." Suddenly her father looked toward the dark, reddish sky. "No! You punish me and mock me at every turn." He stood, put his hands balled into fists at his sides, then raised his arms. As he did, rocks and dirt flew into the air. As the rocks and dirt began to rain back down, Tao stood noticing the debris didn't penetrate her shield. She felt Aaron's hand on her shoulder, then the familiar dizziness as they moved through space to home. When she opened her eyes, that she didn't even realize she had closed, she found herself in a very unfamiliar place. She could feel that she was in her own realm, her own world, but this was a different place. She found herself standing on a mountain ledge looking out on the valley. She could hear the rhythm, but a section of the rhythm that she barely noticed before suddenly seemed louder. It was almost as if the beings that she sensed now were a part of her world, but not of her village. She could feel the being behind her. Aaron still had a grip on her. "This is a healing place," she said. "These beings are pure love. Their presence will help you, as will their knowledge. I will go tell your family that you are safe." Aaron turned toward the being behind them. "Take good care of her." In her mind, Tao heard the reply. "Both of you need healing." She turned to see a beautiful blue, scaly face with a beautiful blue eye. "Yes, I am a dragon," it answered Tao's unspoken question. "Now come," it said as the huge head retreated into the mountain. As they followed, they realized the tunnel led to a very large cave with no top, sort of a bowl carved into the mountain. There, dragons of every size and color were walking and flying around. When her dragon guide reached the cavern, Tao realized that it must be the size of 20 Meru, all standing on each other's shoulders. A small blue dragon that could fit into Tao's hand hovered in front of her face. A tiny squeak emanated from its mouth. Yet Tao knew that it was saying that it was going to send a message to her mother that she was safe. I've already done that, Tao said. Aaron looked at the dragon, who had lowered its head to look at them, then at the tiny blue dragon. She was able to get through? Aaron asked. Yes. Her love for her family is that strong, the larger dragon said. Don't worry, she sent only love. The darkness didn't touch her, couldn't touch her. She needs healing of the heart because of what she has just learned. However, you have neglected to remove the darkness from you. The dragon, about the size of Chimer, came to join the conversation. It was green with green wings and eyes. It nuzzled Aaron from behind. Come, you need much soul cleansing, it said. Tao giggled. She had no idea why she found it amusing. She just did. It turned to her. You find this amusing? I think I'm just so happy to be home. The dragon smiled at her, his eyes twinkling. The MG made a good choice with you, young one. Another dragon came up to them, this one on wing. It landed next to Tao. When it sat, its head was just above Tao's. Its long blue tail curled around her. It tucked its wings against its back. Suddenly, they were no longer in the bowl-like cavern. Instead, they were on a mountain top in a large meadow. Here the grass was yellow, blue, and green. The sky was a familiar bright white with hues of golden yellow lacing through it. It was more beautiful than anything Tao had ever seen. The feeling here was one of peace. When confronting darkness, remember this feeling, this place. It will help you. Tao realized the dragon was now speaking aloud to her. Why was my father so angry, so sad, so afraid? That is the darkness. It is fear which breeds sadness and anger. It can be overpowering. Tao wanted to cry, but the peaceful feeling wouldn't let her. How do you fight that darkness? You love it. How could anyone love that? Tao was confused. You misunderstand. In there are still parts of your father. You love the good, the caring, the love in him, and it will dissolve the darkness. By sending the good parts your love, they grow like Kayu tree you practice on. When they grow, there's no more room for anger, hate, or fear. But he was angry at the one and the MG for choosing me, because he fears you will become like him. But look what your visit has done to him. With that, an orb of light appeared before her eyes. In it, she saw her father as he had appeared to her. She saw herself and Aaron, a globe of light and love surrounding them. When the spike entered his arm, the light began to spread up his arm to reach his heart. There it joined with the light that was already there and began to spread. Soon, you will be able to bring him here to be healed. Tears welled in Tao's eyes. And the world he was on, Tao asked? It's beyond repair. Its spirit, its soul, is almost gone. Soon the creatures on it will destroy themselves and her in the process. Tao let the tears fall. Can we reach him in time? He knows of this place. Soon he will be able to help you bring him here. Tao looked at the orb, now just a swirling ball of light in front of her. As she looked at it, she saw her father again walking back toward the structures. He was stooped as if in pain. He stopped, looked back in her direction as if he could see her. He turned back toward the structure, but instead began walking toward the bluff rising above him to his right. Suddenly she knew that he had decided to warn all Meru entering the world of the danger. He was guarding the portal to turn back all he could before the darkness touched them. She pushed love toward him. He straightened his hunched form a little more. When Tao returned to the training grounds, she found Tyrus there waiting for her. She noticed the worry lines on his brow. I'm the one who went to a forbidden world, and you look like you did. He grabbed her in an embrace and held her tight. When he finally released her, he explained his worry. You've been gone from the rhythm for 2 sleep cycles. He began to cry. I thought I lost you for good. For good. She couldn't understand that it was 2 cycles for them, but only a short time for her. She embraced him again to reassure him. The darkness must slow down time as well as the vibration, she said. You saw the darkness? He pulled away from her to look her in the face. I saw what it does. It kills, she said, a bit of sadness in her voice. Tyrus, I saw my father. He's alive? Tyrus was shocked. Sort of. He was filled with darkness. I sent him love. Suddenly she was excited. You should have seen it. I protected myself and Aaron without thinking about it. You should have seen it. He shook his head. He didn't know whether to be angry at her excitement or amused at her change of attitude. I knew deep down inside that you could do it, he said. I was just being selfish, thinking about living without my best friend. She laughed, punched him in the arm, and began walking toward town. She could feel the rhythm again, her part of the rhythm, with her village and her family. He hurried to catch up with her, rubbing his arm. Dragons are real, she said matter-of-factly. Turned his head to look at her and blinked. My sister was right, he said. My sister was right, he said. This training will drive you mad. Without saying another word, she let him see a bit of her memory of the dragon who taught her to heal, to call the orb when she needed to. He stopped walking. So the bass and the rhythm is really dragons? Is it true they're the originals? What do I look like? She asked teasingly. A wise crone? She could still feel the dragon who helped her, his approval strong in her mind. At the same time, she felt her mother reach out to her. She sent her a message that she would be home soon. It was a full 4 cycles before she saw Aaron again. When she did, her instructor seemed to be more at peace than she had ever seen her. Tao could feel her in the rhythm again, like she hadn't since she was a child, just before her father disappeared. When she did see Aaron, they embraced like old, treasured friends. You are ready to be a warrior and a teacher, Aaron said to Tao. You can travel the worlds alone, but not the forbidden ones. Those we fight together when we are called. Tao nodded. I want to go back to the realm where the humans live. I find them interesting. Just don't give them everything they ask for, Aaron laughed as she said this. I may spend some time in that world myself, but in a region where we have helped build great civilizations like Tihuatansuyu or Saskatchewan. I have learned my lessons, Tao said. I would love to return to those places once I have helped the people we met on my first 2 encounters there. Aaron gave her a sideways glance. I promise I won't do everything for them. Aaron gave her a pat on the back. As for now, take more time with your family. Congratulations on graduating in one piece. Before Tao reached home, her family already knew. There were no secrets. When she reached the hut, a very large round table sat with 20 chairs around it. Milling around outside were friends, neighbors, laughing and talking. Wise Woman was putting a large pot of something on the table. Anders was right behind her with trays of bread. Tao looked to the sky, said a silent prayer of thanks to the One, and continued to her home. Rika saw her, ran full speed, and almost knocked Tao over when she jumped into her arms. What is this about? Tao asked, holding Rika in the air above her head. Rika giggled. I only went to see Aaron for a few moments. But you said you graduated and can travel on your own now, Rika said excitedly. Tao put her down. She heard the excitement of everyone in her mind and felt them wrap their love around her. Tao realized that this is what the light workers were protecting, and that this is what the weapon of choice is to fight the dark. She noticed Tyrus talking with his parents. She thought what a striking couple his parents were. Both parents were golden with dark brown stripes. Their eyes tended more toward a golden yellow than brown. The love between them was so strong it was almost visible when they looked at each other and at Tyrus. They wore matching tunics of green with yellow patterns all over them. The leggings they both wore were darker solid green, like she had seen the grass and trees in other realm. She walked to them to join the conversation. The expression of love appeared the same when they looked at her. Darliana closed the distance between them while the guys looked on. She didn't walk as much as glide in her graceful way. Her hair, beautiful brown and wavy, fell loosely over her shoulders. Her nose was almost cat-like. Tao admired the look of her. Child, we couldn't be prouder of you, she said to Tao. Tao blushed, her blue cheeks turning a darker blue shade at the embarrassment. Your training was so short. I hope you are well prepared for what is to come. Although the love never wavered, Tao felt as if it were meant in a negative way. I will protect our world and any world to spread love and light. Tao couldn't help but feel a bit slightened. She didn't think that she wasn't trained well as the. Did she think that she wasn't trained as well as the others? Was her training that much shorter than the others? As she was doubting herself, she felt the deep hum from the dragon clan in the rhythm. A voice that she somehow knew was the only one who could hear spoke to her. She knew that she was the only one who could hear spoke to her. You are ready. You are strong. You are prepared. You are loved and loved. Look around. As she looked around, she saw all the people from the village talking, laughing, and celebrating her. Self doubt is self defeating. She straightened her posture again to start mingling with all of those who came to celebrate her. Darling, Tyrus's sister, glided up to her with the same grace and elegance her mother had. Her smile genuinely beamed at her. She was younger than Tyrus, but not by much. She hugged Tao slightly in order to whisper in her ear, I heard I was right about the dragons being the base of the rhythm of our realm. Tao laughed, pulling out of her embrace. I saw them as a little when I was sick. I saw an MG too. Darling was looking for confirmation. Tao smiled at her. They bring the same peace as the MG, Tao whispered back. Darling seemed to almost float into the sky. I knew it. Nobody believed me. Tao brought her index finger to her lips, causing Darling to nod. After a great meal and so much talking, she felt worn out. She heard Aaron call for her. She excused herself, left her celebration, and headed for the training grounds. When she arrived, she found Aaron sitting on the grass next to the Caillou tree, which was now a fully mature tree from all the practicing. Aaron slumped against the trunk of the tree, head down, even as Tao approached her. She felt nothing from Aaron, no emotion, no thoughts. Thinking she was dead, Tao approached slowly, dreading what she might find. As she reached what she thought was a dead body, Aaron lifted her head. Tao jumped, surprised by the movement. She realized it was taking great effort for Aaron to close herself off from the rhythm. Summon the sphere, Aaron said flatly. Tao obeyed without questioning. Concentrate on your father. We need his exact location. Tao once again obeyed. Her father was on his knees looking up into the reddish-brown sky. His arms were outstretched above his head. He looked like he was in pain. It will take both of us to get to him. I will open the portal. You concentrate on where he is. Although confused, she did as she was instructed. She was concentrating so hard that she didn't even feel the dizziness of the portal. Instead, she found herself standing in front of her father. She could feel the good in him, with a little bit of the darkness and fear. He wrapped his arms around her, the orb of light dissipating. She hugged him in a tight embrace. Shield now, Aaron yelled at her. Without thinking, she raised her shield around them. She looked at Aaron and saw the cause of the alarm. There were thousands of beings, almost as tall as they were, running toward them. Tao had never felt such fear and anger as she felt from them. Then she saw why they were so afraid as she watched a ball of light hit the city that wasn't very far from the group of people. Many of them just evaporated in the light as it touched the ground. She could feel that they were gone. As she thought about escaping, she closed her eyes and found herself on the world with the humans. They were a tiny island. They were on a tiny island in a large blue sea. What have you done? Her father was angry again. You should have let me die. I couldn't do that. And I needed your daughter's help to do this. She is more powerful than anyone I've ever met. Erin shouted back, falling to her knees with effort. There is still too much darkness in me, he said with emotion in his voice. If it spreads, it will destroy this world like it did Samud. Can you control it, Father? I am trying. It wants to consume you as it was me. Tao's father was surprised when she laughed. It wasn't a childish giggle, but a full laugh from deep down. The sound made him feel lighter somehow. It was as if someone released a million little blue butterflies that flitted around his ears. He blinked. With the thought of the butterflies, they came. It was as if her skin turned into butterflies that lifted into the air, touching his skin. Erin gasped in surprise. As they touched his skin, they began to fall to the ground one by one. Tao's expression changed from light laughter to determination. She sent a spear of light to surround him. The butterflies turned blue again, both inside the bubble and outside. They lifted off, swirling around him as if daring the darkness to kill them. Suddenly, as they started, they disappeared. She turned to Erin. You disobeyed the MG and used me. Etsy will carry out punishment of the circuit for us both. Tao sat on the soft sand of the beach. I'm sorry, but I couldn't let him die, Erin explained. It was my fault that he was consumed by the darkness. She sat next to Tao, while Tao's father stood behind them, silent. My shield failed. I became frightened, and my shield slipped, letting in the darkness. I was selfish, so I put up a shield around myself, but not before the darkness consumed him. As Erin was explaining, Tao saw the whole battle in her mind. She could see the thick black ooze shooting out from the contorted figures that used to be the inhabitants of the red world of Samud. She could feel that Samud was alive then, screaming in pain, asking for help from the light. The ooze hit the shield that Erin held up around them, covering the light with darkness. She could feel Erin's fright, saw the shield drop as her father was caught off guard, while wielding a beam of light and love. The ooze covered him, causing him to fall. He continued to fight, trying to overcome the darkness as it seeped into him. Even as it did, the light in his heart fought back. She could see that the memory of her and her mother kept him fighting all those years, years that felt like days to him. He kept fighting and never gave up. Tao's tears added to the salty ocean that had crept up to lap at her feet. She felt even more love than ever for her father. As she sat there crying, she could feel Mari shiver. She decided that they had contaminated her after all. So what's next? Tao's father asked. Tao stood and turned to him. I've called for Anders and Wise Woman. That's a good idea. I'll open a portal for you to send a message. It's done, Erin, Tao said flatly. That's impossible, even for you. As Erin said this, a portal opened over the water. Anders and Wise Woman glided above the water to reach the shore. Tao's father stepped back away from them while still facing his parents. Anders embraced his granddaughter. Wise Woman looked from person to person to assess the situation. Before you scold me, Erin began, he would have died on Samud when she did. Wise Woman inhaled deeply, held it for a moment before slowly releasing the breath. What's done is done, Wise Woman said. You were right to send for his child. Anders had released Tao to walk to his son. He was examining the shield. It's strong, it's holding, but I don't know for how long. He looked into his son's eyes. It's good to see you, Torin. Taurin, now, let's look at you. Taurin visibly recoiled. Don't get too close, Da, Tao's father said. I can see it. Anders walked around his son, assessing the situation. It appears your heart's intact. It's trying to seep into the ground. Tao's sphere is complete, but it will take too much energy to maintain it. We must protect Maori. If I can absorb it completely, let it overtake me. Can you take me off this world? No, even if we send you to a dark world, some would still be here. Can we separate and send it away? Tao asked. Same scenario. It isn't completely separable from your father. Tao thought about the light sphere and the dragon had given her. It appeared in her hands. I have to try. She touched the sphere to the one surrounding her father. The shield completely engulfed the sphere as she retracted her hands. At first, the inky darkness reached for the sphere, then recoiled back into her father. She closed her eyes, concentrating on what she wanted to happen. This I bid with all my might, push the darkness into the light. The thick blackness oozed out as black smoke. It filled the sphere, swirling faster and faster in its attempt to find a way out. When she reached in to grab the sphere, she heard an audible gasp from behind her. She took the floating sphere into her hands, slowly turning while holding it at arm's length. Her grandparents turned toward the sea. Both extended their right hands, opening a portal. When it opened, Hal could see it was Samud's world again, dark and dead. She hurled the sphere through the portal with both hands and a push of magic. Her grandparents had made sure the portal was one way, only an entry into the dead world. That was amazing, Aaron exclaimed. You're stronger than anyone I've ever seen. It's over. Not so fast, Haosen said. I felt some of it seep into the ground before you could pull it out. As if on cue, a small rodent ran from behind him, hissed, and then ran into the forest. They all looked at each other. That's not so bad, Aaron said. It's small amount, right? The doubt was evident in her. It's small, but it will grow. Let's get back so we can get the dragons here to purify, said Wise Woman. The Wise Woman was opening a portal for them all back to their realm. Tal felt the blue dragon that had given her sphere. She felt him in her heart more than in her mind. It was as if their hearts were connected. The feeling made Tal cry. It was such a pure, true love. When they emerged in their realm, the others were in the dragon cave on the mountain. She was in the meadow on top of the neighboring mountain. She was alone. She sat in the meadow, feeling peace wash over her. It didn't drown out the guilt. She felt it releasing darkness into the world she loved. She drew her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around her legs, and laid her head on her knees. She felt the blue dragon's presence, but didn't raise her head. When am I going before Etsy? It's not for me to say. Do you know that I'm as guilty as you? What do you mean? I let the darkness leak into Mari. It was me. She lifted her head and looked at his sparkling blue eyes. But I gave you the sphere of light to find him. I didn't realize Aaron would use you to get to him. I just knew he was in pain. I just knew he was the pain in both of your hearts, and I wanted to relieve it. You knew she was going to do this? I didn't, but the MG did. We don't know everything. We're just more connected to the one in the circuit than the Mari. Just before coming home, I felt you in my heart. It was a good feeling. She put her head back on her knees. The dragon stretched out in front of her so its head was level with hers. Because we share a heart, her head snapped up. How? What? Wait, what? We were wished into existence at the same time. Your mother and father wished for you, mine wished for me. The one, in all its mysterious knowledge, knew we would need each other, so he made us of one heart. All dragons are made that way, with a piece of the Mari heart. Meru heart. From behind her, she heard someone land. When she turned, she saw a huge red dragon. In her mind, she heard a low hum. It was soothing. Actually, it spoke aloud, we give a piece of a dragon heart for Meru, who is special. It ties them closer to the one and to each other. It is your dragon heart that keeps you from being touched by the darkness. So, is that why some Meru are bonded to dragons and some are not? Yeah, but most Meru don't even know of our existence unless they are chosen. Like Tyrus's sister, the hum grew louder, almost like a purr. She is mine. Tao thought the dragon was smiling. So, is Mari being purified? Tao changed the subject. It is too small to touch Mari now. We are going to use warriors to do the cleanup until it gets out of control. Tao put her head back on her knees and rested. Chapter 2. Tao heard her name being called. Before she could wonder who it was speaking to her, she suddenly found herself on an area of her realm that she had never been to before. As she wondered where she was, the answers came to her before she could formulate the questions in her mind. She looked around her. She was in a high meadow surrounded by several mountain peaks. In the middle of the meadow was an emerald green lake, surrounded by yellow grass with touches of blue and green flowers. The grass was thick and soft on her bare feet. She knew this was a sacred part of the dragon domain. The dragons lived on all the mountaintops in her realm, not just the peaceful meadow and the bowl-topped mountain. Those were treatment centers for light warriors. This, she knew, was a sacred meeting place for dragons and MG only. As she waited, other Meru appeared, along with Enkidu. She watched as her father, Aaron, Wise Woman, and Anders appeared. She went to them to embrace them. Nobody spoke. The large dragon that had greeted her at the bowl-like cave that first time appeared at one end of the meadow. It seemed to be the leader of the dragons. Next to him appeared her twin flame, the blue dragon whose heart she shared. Other dragons appeared one by one, forming a circle around the confused Meru. As Tao turned to take it all in, she realized the dragon varied in shape, size, and color as much as the Meru did. She also realized that the youngest dragon was older than any Meru or Enkidu present by generations, maybe centuries. She had no idea where all this knowledge came from. The answers were just there. The lead dragon began to speak aloud. The darkness has claimed the life of Simud. There was a collective gasp. Some of the inhabitants, not touched by the dark, still live inside of her. The surface is uninhabitable. Tao noticed more than one warrior was shedding tears for a world they tried to save. Now, Mari has been infected. Tao bowed her head. We will not dwell on the reason, as the MG expected this. We will, however, concentrate most of our efforts on saving her. Everyone will need to be cleansed before end of a trip on any world. Oh, before and after a trip on any world. The MG expected this. This was planned. One of the warriors Tao didn't recognize spoke up. It is not our place to question the MG, Wise Woman spoke. The one, the creator of all, has a plan. It is not up to us to question, but to obey. I have lost friends and family to the darkness. I was touched by it once. I can't fathom a creator who would allow this to happen. He responded. Without thinking about it, Tao found herself sending him love and healing. The beam of light surrounded her before shooting out, engulfing the warrior who had spoken. Tao wasn't even aware of it until she heard gasps and noticed that she had become the focus of everyone's attention. Escaping from the targeted warrior was a gray smoke. At first, it swirled lazily in the light. Then, as it became less and less visible, it swirled faster and faster. Suddenly, other warriors focused on the Meru, sending light to counter the dark. The dark disappeared in the light. The warrior collapsed. He looked at Tao. How did you know? I didn't. I just felt sorrow and was trying to comfort you. This is a place of peace, and you weren't at peace. Her grandmother put her arm around Tao. And now you know, the dragon spoke again. There are a few among you who have all the races of the realm in them. She is not the only one, just the one close enough to feel the dark. Tao looked at her grandmother. This is not the time or place. Where did the dark go? Another warrior spoke. Should we be looking for it here? The warriors all looked from one to another, as if suspecting one another with darkness in them. It was Tao who answered. It was absorbed by the light. When troubled, we should all give it to the one. I learned this as a little. As she thought of young Meru, she heard Rika call for her. She looked up at her blue dragon pleadingly. Just as suddenly as she had thought of going home, she was there with Rika. Where were you? Her little sister asked. I was afraid I couldn't find you or Da. When I called out to Grandma and Grandpa, they weren't in the rhythm. I thought you had left the realm again without saying goodbye. She was close to tears. Tao hugged her little sister tightly. She let her see the meeting of the dragons, the Meru, all standing in two circles, one inside the other. It was a very important meeting. You were with dragons? Meru and Enkidu? Her sister was in awe. I was, but don't tell anyone. Tao knew it was on the rhythm by now and that there was a meeting of warriors, but not everyone was aware of the dragons or their part in keeping the world safe. Their mother, Mary, walked into the hut to join them. I have a few questions for you, Tao said to her mother. As she said this, Anders, Wise Woman, and Teosin entered the hut. It was Wise Woman who spoke up. Why don't we sit and have some tea? They sat at the round table. Wise Woman rose to put a kettle on for tea. As she reached for the kettle on the counter, it appeared on the table, steaming. Cups and saucers appeared in front of everyone, including Rika. Tao, who had been looking down at the table, picked up her cup as if it wasn't a surprise to her at all. How'd you do that? Tao's mother looked at Wise Woman. I didn't. Your daughter did. After taking a sip of steaming black tea, Tao looked up and smiled. Rika took a sip of her sweet, warm Caillou juice. Awesome! Tao, you're the greatest! This elicited a giggle from the adults. It's nothing for the daughter of all the races, Tao said. Her mother looked confused. Wise Woman spoke up. My grandmother was Enkidu, and my grandfather, Meru. My brother of the heart, the blue dragon standing next to the dragon leader, told me we share a heart. So I know where the dragon comes from. But where does the energy come from? They all looked around the table at one another, confusion evident in their expressions. Suddenly, Anders spoke. That note, I'm going to turn on a light. It is rumored that the reason dragons exude peace is because their energy with corporeal form. As soon as her grandfather said it, she knew it was true. In her mind, she heard her blue dragon, her twin flame speak. You are mine. We are connected. Then aloud, so everyone could hear. We are energy who have volunteered to vibrate at a lower level to help other creatures, other realms. I knew when I gave my heart that you would be more powerful than any Meru, more loving than any in our realm. Rika gasped, but the head of the blue dragon appeared above the table. Tao felt love wash over her as she shed tears of joy. She could tell that her family felt the same love. So why don't I have a Meru heart? Tao asked. It was Teosin's turn to answer. You know how Meru are born? We, as a couple, wish for a child. Yes, Tao said. You ask the MG to bless you with a child, and if you are deemed worthy, you will have one. Right. But in our case, the MG came to us soon after we were joined. It explained that a dragon wished for a child. This dragon chose us to raise its offspring's twin. Because in order to conceive, a dragon has to give two parts of his heart, one to a dragon and one to a Meru. Mary finished for them. We didn't realize that dragon was MG also. Rika crawled into her sister's lap. She was listening and taking in all the conversation. Mom, where are your parents? Why don't we ever see them? They live in a village on the other side of the dragon range. Is Tyra's sister like me? No, she has no Enkidu in her. It was her twin flame answering for her. The Enkidu amplify abilities. Tao took a deep breath, exhaled slowly. And Rika? Rika looked at her sister. She's not dragon, the blue dragon answered. She felt tingly all over. She was the topic of the rhythm today, again. What are we going to do about what I did to Mari? Anders put his hand over hers, but it was her father who spoke. You mean what we did to Mari? He put emphasis on the word we. We will have to ask the dragons, since now everyone in our realm is aware of them, not just the warriors. They could tell from the rhythm that nobody was upset to learn that the vibration of peace and love in the rhythm were from dragons. The rhythm seemed to hum in an excited yet happy, peaceful way. 2 rests later, an Enkidu showed up at their hut. Tao expected him. She recognized him from the Dragon Circle meeting. Because of the rhythm, she knew his name was Basawan. It is a pleasure to meet my cousin, he said as she met him at the door. He bowed at the waist, his long beard and hair almost touching the ground. This made Tao giggle. She bowed out of respect, still stifling a giggle. The pleasure is all mine, she managed, straightening to full height. Although Tao was average height for a Meru, she came only to mid-chest. Our mission is to help humans protect themselves from the dark. Are you ready? She nodded. She turned back toward her family, shrugged Teosin, Mary, and Rico, holding Rico the longest. I want to see it all when you get back, Rika said. I will send you updates while it happens, Tao said. Rika jumped out of her arms, clapping her hands. Basawan shook his head. I'm not sure that's possible, he said. Tao turned to look at him. Maybe not for you. Basawan roared with laughter. The sound was loud. It made his whole body shake. At first, Rika hid behind Tao. Then she and her parents joined the laughter. Tao only smiled. As they walked to the training area where it was safe to open a portal, they continued their conversation. So, you have the ability to sense darkness in others? I guess so. I sense a lot of things I thought everyone could sense. And that's as far as I've gotten. I hope you enjoyed it so far.